Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. So now guys, I don't know if this guy is trying to take the piss or is trying to mock Nigerians or anything like that, because I don't know what goes on in his head. But guys, I bring you this 2023 presidency. I will hand over quietly to my successor, and this is a comment attributed to Malam Buhari. So that's the headline again. 2023, I'll hand over quietly to my successor, and this is a comment being made by the Malam president of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari. So now let's now find out exactly what this Malami has to say. President Muhammadu Buhari has expressed gratitude to all Nigerians who voted him into office both in 2015 and in 2019. So now let's just pause there for a moment, because we are going to be pausing a lot in this video. No Nigerian voted this guy into office in 2015 and especially in 2019. In 2015, there was a lot of rigging that went on within the Nigerian space. You all recall what happened in Kano State. So what really sways the Nigerian presidency are two states, Kano State and Lagos State. So you saw the rigging, the level of rigging that was taking place in Kano State then, which was superintended by the then Commissioner of Police, who later became the Inspector General of Police, who was then sacked. I can't recall his name. You remember that guy with the tribal marks? So he was then the guy superintending that, and as a reward of that, of course, he was then given the Inspector General of Police position. We saw 13, 12, 14-year-old boys and girls lining up to vote for an election. This is something that was done all over Kano State, and it was recorded by everybody on their cell phone. So INEC was aware of this, and Professor Jiga, of course, did not deem it necessary to cancel this, that these people were not qualified to vote for that election. And of course, in Lagos State, it was under the control of Tinubu, so you already know that it's just mass rigging all the way through. So it was rigging all the way through that brought this guy into play in the first instance, and Goodluck Jonathan then should have insisted that the INEC chairman, then Professor Jiga, should cancel that election or should take a position on the viral videos that we're seeing of the mass rigging that took place both in Kano State and Lagos State, which of course swayed the election, because the election in 2015 was won by a very narrow margin. So we all saw that. So now this guy now coming out to say that people voted for him in 2015 is an absolute lie. But of course he will take to his religion and tell you that he's sworn by his religion that he would adhere to integrity. But of course then the facts that are known in the public space runs contrary, as always, to this guy's public pronouncement. So that was 2015. 2019, of course, I don't even have to tell anybody about anything that happened in 2019, because this guy was not even qualified to run both in 2015 and 2019 anyway, because he did not even meet the minimum requirements of the constitution that you should have a school cert. But then they made a pathway for him by virtue of him being a Fulani guy. You will recall, of course, how his motorcade was stoned in Lagos and indeed the whole of the southwest. And of course, the Igbo people will always reject somebody like Malam Buhari, or even anybody of a Fulani inclination wholesale. So this guy lost completely in the southern regions. But then, of course, we had the results from Borno State and places like that, which were effectively war zones. And they were telling us that the voters in Borno State had an 80% uptake from the results that we had in 2015. So there were 80% more people in Borno State voting than they did in 2015, even though that place is under the vice grip of Boko H, you know. So they had that. So they are now telling us that the Igbos, who are fervently opposed to these chancers, the voting results right across the whole of Igbo land was down by 30-40%. So the people who detest this guy fervently they are voting, and they, of course, if you detest somebody fervently, then of course you would move them out of your way. So the people who detest this person fervently, their voting was down by 30-40%, but the people who are in a war zone in Borno State, etc., their voting was up by 80%. This was what Professor Mahmoud Yakub told us that happened in 2015. So complete rigging across the board. So they then went to law, of course, and you know what happened in the law courts, where you had Tanko Mohammed sitting on top of the legal system in Nigeria. He said, ignore whatever, forget whatever it is about school sat or no school sat. This guy is eminently qualified, and that's the end of it. So now, when you go to the Supreme Court and you get a judgment against you, then your hope is just to surrender to God then, because there's no further place to go within the Nigerian space. So mass rigging that brought this guy in, but then of course he's now trying to take the piss with this comment. Let me read it again. President Muhammadu Buhari has expressed gratitude to all Nigerians who voted him into office both in 2015 and 2019. Now, of course, no single Nigerian, I won't say no single Nigerian, but really the vast majority of the country have always turned their back on this guy, because of course we know what he's like, and what he is like is what is playing out now. So we carry on. Speaking on Thursday, January 16 in Abuja, in the company of a team of lawyers, the president said that as a beneficiary of free and credible elections, he is morally bound to hand over power to his successor in 2023 quietly. So this guy now is now saying that he's going to hand over power to somebody in 2023 quietly. So there are several elements to that. The first thing is this guy even going to hand over power? Because of course there's nothing in the antecedent of this guy to suggest that he would hand over power to anybody. This is a guy that in 2011 said he was only going to serve one term if was ever elected. Now he's in his second term, which Nigerians rejected him, but he and his boys foisted him on the Nigerian people anyway. So that's the first instance. So this is a guy also that said he would abide by the Nigerian Constitution, and anybody that feels that this guy is abiding by the Nigerian Constitution, to please come into the comment section and tell me how, because I personally do not see how the Nigerian Constitution is being abided by. There's nothing in the runnings of that country by this regime that suggests that anything of the Constitution is being adhered to. The human rights has completely been suspended, arrest without trial, indefinite detention, going against the Constitution, criticizing the president is now treasonable felony. All the weight of the apparatus of state is weighed just to defend this guy in office, to the detriment of 200 million of people. A weight, of course, towards the Malamites and the Fulanis, etc., especially the Fulanis and largely the Malamis. So it's like a Malami regime is a master-servant relationship now within the Nigerian space, with the masters, of course, being the Fulanis and the rest of us being the slaves and the errand boys. So this is really the structure. So the Constitution, of course, has completely been disregarded. You will recall, of course, when this guy came into power in 2015, he said he's for everybody and for nobody. But of course, if you look at the coloration of his regime, Abba Kyari, Daura, Bichi, Magashi, Hamid Ali, etc., etc., these are all of the people that circle around the seat of power, and these are all the first voices that he hears. So of course already you know he's for somebody and not for other people, and the people that is for and the people that is not for is completely fleshed out for your visual seeing within the Nigerian space. So complete nonsense, all of this thing that this guy is saying. But we carry on. He said, morally, I want to have a clear conscience. I swore by the Holy Book that I will abide by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So we've already discussed that, and we've already dismissed that, because there's nothing, of course, in the actions of this guy to suggest any of that. So this is takiya, according to what they are saying that they do. So this is a new term that's just come to me recently, by the way, over the last few months, that they have this thing within their own structure called takiya, that you can tell any lie and it's acceptable within their culture, so long as you get your way. This is now takiya now, because of course this guy is not abiding by the Constitution in any definition of that understanding, and is of course have no intention of keeping his words, because this is a guy that said he will serve 1 term. He served 2 terms now. Anyway, I've done all that, so let me not repeat myself. So let's just carry on. I will continue to do my best and hope that by 2023 I can hand over quietly to whoever succeeds me, and I wish him the best of luck. So now, this guy handing over in 2023 is a very... We have already done the 2011 thing about him serving 1 term and is now in his 2nd term. We've already done the thing about him not abiding by the Constitution, etc., etc. So there's nothing about this guy that suggests that we can take him at his own word. They'll tell you that he's a man of integrity, but by his actions, there is nothing to suggest that he's anything of that ilk. But we carry on. The president pointed out that he will do everything in his power to make sure that the 2023 election will be free from all forms of illegality and fraud. So now this is a guy now. No, just look at that statement just as a standalone. He is saying that he will do everything in his power to make sure that the 2023 election is free and fair. So what has he done in all of the elections that he has superintended so far within the Nigerian space that will enable you to place confidence on that statement? So this is a guy that supervised the election in Kogi State, by the way. We all saw what happened in Kogi State. A guy that has not paid people salaries for 36 months, which is going on 3 years. They are now telling us that he was re-elected into Kogi State. Mass rigging, of course, mass killing as well. Dino Melaye lost a relative to that election. Complete barbarism. We saw what happened in Imo State recently when the people of Imo State voted Ehidioha as their governor, but Malam Buhari has told them now that no, it's the APC guy that is actually your governor. It doesn't matter what you are saying you have voted or not. We saw what happened in Osun State when the people of Osun State, or is it Osun State or whatever, that they voted Adeleke, that fat boy, idiot, uneducated person, as their governor. Is a fat boy, an idiot, and uneducated, but that is what the people of that state want. So if that is what they want, then that is what they should have. But of course, Malam Buhari wants something different, and they've cancelled that election and put in some APC guy. I can't even recall his name. This is what happened in Ekiti State. The Ekiti State weighed in the direction of what is that guy, Peter the Rock, he calls himself, the one that is dancing in the Caribbean at the moment. I can't quite recall his name. But then, of course, Malam Buhari has told them that no, whatever you want, it is Fayemi that is your governor. What happened in Kano State? The Kano State people haven't gotten fed up with Ganduje pocketing millions of dollars in his Agbada way, which they saw on viral videos, rejected him. But what would Malam Buhari say? He said, it doesn't really matter what you people have to say. This APC guy, Ganduje, is going to be your governor. So this is really what's going on. What happened in his own election, the election that he was not even qualified to run for, they put all their structures there, Abubakar Malami, Mohammed Tanko, Adamu AIG, and everything. So they surrounded everything, and they just said, no matter what you vote or whatever you say, because of course the whole of the southern region of that country rejected Buhari in that election. We all saw that, and a good part of the northern region of that country rejected Buhari too, because Buhari that they thought that was coming was not the Buhari that arrived. So the guy has completely been demythified as a result of his antecedents as the president of that country, because what they thought this guy was going to be was not what he turned out to be, and they of course en masse rejected him at the polls in 2019. But of course, this guy had already surrounded all of the apparatus of state. He put his own man there at INEC, Yakub Mohammed, who was, even if God comes down to make a pronouncement, this guy will still say Buhari is the winner. Whatever happened within the space, this Buhari was always going to be declared. And of course, then, if he goes to court, you remember they removed Justice Onoge to put Tanko Mohammed there to carry out this particular mission. So you also all that. So this is not a guy now that is not promising you free and fair elections in 2023. Oh, now that you are out of the way, the country now deserves free and fair election, Abi. But the country did not deserve its own way, its own will. The will of the people counted for nothing when you were running. But of course, now that you are out of the running, the country now deserves free and fair election. So there's two questions to be answered here. One, is this guy going to leave that office at all? There's no real reason to believe that he is going to leave that office, because in 2011 he did promise that he was only going to run for one term, and is now in his second term. And now, of course, now the only thing that can stop Buhari from continuing to be the president in 2023 is as a result of ill health, one, which is the real key thing, or a result of mass movement against him. And if there is mass movement against him, that might not be sufficient to stop him, because they have a template that they follow. They'll just roll the army out to wipe out a few people, and people, you know, Nigerians are quite timid by nature. So if you go out protesting and making all this noise, as soon as they wipe out a few people, you just go back to Miolekuo, another kind of Egba Mio. You know, they understand that these Nigerians are quite cowardly and timid by nature. So as soon as they wipe out a few people, they'll just settle you down, play nice for a few months, and then just continue to brutalize you again. So there's no real reason to believe that Malam Buhari is going to leave the Nigerian space, the Aso Rock space, in 2023, apart from if health fails him to the point, and health has failed him really from 2015 by the way till date, but he has continued. But if health fails him sufficiently to the point that is completely incapacitated, that would be the only reason now, because of course he will still have to campaign. Remember, he tried to escape campaigning in 2019 and he tried to delegate it to Tinubu. But of course, the Nigerians forced him that you have to show an appearance, because if you are saying that you are fit of body and mind to run this country, then we need to see you display that and demonstrate that visually for us to see. And whenever he did go out on the campaign trail, this guy was always falling down and was always being propped up by his aides and whatnot. So, and probably medication as well. So unfit, of course. But really, what can stop this guy from continuing to be the president of that country in 2023 is not anything that I say now, which is just takia, as they have now made us to understand, but it's really the will of God. But we continue. Let's just see what else is being said in this piece. Meanwhile, it was reported that former chairman of the ruling party or Progressive Congress APC, Bisi Akande, had called the President Muhammadu Buhari administration high. So now this guy, of course, must be living in some foreign country and parachuting into Nigeria, because you cannot live within the Nigerian space and score this guy anything other than an F9. But we continue. Akande said the president, since assuming office in May 2015, had performed extremely well for all Nigerians. Speaking to journalists at his home at Ila Oragun during his 81st birthday celebration, Akande said the president is fulfilling all his campaign promises to the people of Nigeria. So this especially disappoints me because, of course, when a man has reached that milestone of the age of 80, he should not really feel any need to tell lies anymore. Because what is he now lying for again? Is this now for the benefit rather of his children or what? Because really, a man at 80 who still cannot stand on his own feet and say, look, this is how I see it. Wole Soyinka would not go to this extent. Wole Soyinka does not really care anymore. He has lived a full life. He has reached a fulfilled life, and he has won in life. So it is off the back of that victory and grace of God that he should not be giving back. But this guy is certainly not giving back with that comment if he's off the view that Malam Buhari scores highly. He's probably one of a handful of people who are of that opinion on this planet. But we carry on, highlighting areas where the president has surpassed his expectations. Akande said President Buhari has succeeded in tackling insecurity, corruption, and growing the country's economy. So now I'm not quite sure how Buhari has grown the country's economy, because of course the country now has the tag of the poverty capital of the world under his stewardship. But of course now this Akande is playing for the dollar still at the age of 81. Akande said, I want to judge by the result. He said he would tackle insecurity. Buhari has degraded quite considerably all negative aspects of insecurity he inherited when he came into power. So now this is just utter and crass nonsense, because insecurity has escalated and taken a new dimension within the Nigerian space since 2015, because of course Boko Haram is still there and they're still battling it out in the northern parts of the country. But then on top of that, now this Boko Haram has now morphed into what is now known as the Fulani headsmen, led of course and coordinated by Miyetti Kutehari, these people, and they are now orchestrating attacks now within the southern parts of the country. So if anything, the insecurity in the country has now escalated to the point that the sub-regions within the country have now taken it upon themselves to set up structures to secure their own lives, because they have now lost complete confidence in Buhari and his regime. Amotekun, of course, is what I'm talking about, and this, of course, runs contrary to what this man is saying. I'm not going to use really harsh words towards the comments made by an 81-year-old man, because of course that runs contrary to the Yoruba culture where I come from, but I can't disagree, and I do disagree. Conversations in the comment section, Buhari, his scorecard for himself, and now the scorecards of elements within his own collective, giving him a high five. I will leave office quietly is what the Malami is trying to lead you to believe. But what is your take on it? Come share thoughts about all this with me in the comment section. But before you do that, click on the red subscribe button so it turns grey. The bell button notifies you every time I drop a new video. Then come tell me what you're making of how Malam Buhari is trying to reposition himself within the Nigerian space in the comment section. So I'll leave you here. Carry on with you in the comment section. But here I say peace.